One of the topics that I wanted to chat with you about, because I know you have some thoughts on this, is that it seems to be living a long, healthy life is about the habits that you do, but also, as we touched on, some of the habits that you avoid. Like, again, not being overweight, not relying on ultra processed foods as the foundation of your diet. But increasingly, there's a lot of awareness that part of what you don't do is you don't overexpose yourself to toxins in the environment.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of toxins that we're all going to be exposed to. Right now, we're recording in California and Los Angeles. There's a fire burning just, maybe 50 miles north of here. It's going to take down the air quality today. The score for the air quality is going to go down. We're going to spend some time outside. At home, I have air filters, but we're in a studio. There's no air filters. We're going to be exposed to some toxins that are there. What is your point of view on toxins and the low stress way to avoid the biggest ones that you might have concern about? And do you have any perspectives that you've been sharing with your patients or your community on this topic?
Part of the privilege of being born is to be able to live on this planet, but the tax that we have to pay for being on this planet in modern society is that we're exposed to toxins all the time. Hard to avoid them, and the toxins aren't just in the fumes from the paint that, was on the wall that really stink, or from bus fumes. I remember when I was a kid, I became really acutely aware of toxins because, I was growing up in Pittsburgh and we'd be waiting for a bus or something like that. And this bus would belch these fumes right into our faces. And oh my God, it just smells so bad. And I knew it was going to be bad for me, and so we'd learn to stand someplace else. But frankly, it's actually very difficult to avoid environmental toxins and harms. If you smell something, you want to kind of avoid it. I always tell people, if you're filling up your car with gas, if you still drive a gasoline car, I say, do you stand upstream or downstream from the pump? And most people look at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. Why would you even ask that question? And I said, well, if you can smell the gasoline when you're pumping your gas, you're standing downstream. Okay. And that means that you're breathing in the fumes, the solvents fumes from the gasoline into your lungs, which is going to mutate your DNA, which is something you could avoid by simply moving to the other side of the pump, all right, or the nozzle. And that way you'll be upstream and you won't be smelling it the same way, right? So those are some simple moves you can make. But the one that actually really grabs my attention now, that I'm telling my community, I am trying to raise the alarm wherever I can, and I am taking as many actions as I can in my own house, is microplastics. Microplastics really are like the new smoking. Okay. We know smoking is bad for you. People denied it for a long time. We have also known that microplastics are everywhere. And I was, honestly, I was kind of blowing it off myself for a number of years. People would just say, well, what do you think about this plastic cup you're drinking from, or the water bottle? Look, it wasn't so long ago where if you went on vacation to a sunny environment, somebody would hand you a bottled water out of a plastic bottle, and you probably drink it on a really hot day, and you want to stay hydrated, right? Now we know those plastic water bottles are shedding microplastics. There's a definition. It's less than 5 millimeters of size of plastic. You might even be able to see them. They're like the tiny little plastic particles that get shed into anything that's plastic that just breaks down. All right. And then there's nanoplastics, which are less than 1 micrometer. That's like 10,000 times smaller. You can't see that at all. And they're coating everything. Pantyhose, you put on pantyhose, not you, but if somebody puts on pantyhose, you're going to be spraying some of that stuff just by snapping the fiber into the air. It goes right into your lungs. It's so small, it gets absorbed into your bloodstream. And we now know that you can actually find microplastics in your blood. We know that microplastics are in our food. They're in our beverages, anything plastic bottle. They're in anything that you turn into a beverage or food that starts with plastic. Something I was stunned by is that a tea bag, a typical tea bag, and this was done by a research study, made out of paper, I thought, actually was sprayed with a little bit of plastic on the outside by the manufacturer so that the paper doesn't rip and all the tea leaves come out. All right. I guess it makes sense from a manufacturer's perspective. But you dunk that tea to steep the tea, it sheds 1 billion plastic particles into a mug of tea. 1 billion from one tea bag, and you're drinking it. So how does this like add up? Well, the most recent estimates is that many of us in America are eating the equivalent of 1 credit card's worth of plastic in our body every week. Okay, so until recently, when somebody said, Dr. Lee, is that bad? I said, we don't have any evidence of if it's bad or not. It's something I'd like to avoid. Now we have the evidence. A study that was done out of Italy about 1.5 years ago found in people who had cardiovascular disease, so they had damaged blood vessels, they had plaques, narrowing of their blood vessels, specifically the blood vessels feeding their brain, all right? And they found when they were doing the procedure, the standard medical procedure to take out the blockage, so you can go in there and fish out the plaque and open up the blood vessel, they found microplastics in the blood vessels in the clots. Wow, whoa. They're studying embedded in the clots. And then when they actually did the outcome studies, they found those people who had, not everybody had plastics, but a lot of people did. Those people who had microplastics embedded in their clot had a 4-fold increase in the risk of having a fatal heart attack or stroke.
Crazy. I think they were even some of the things that came out of there. We talked about the study with my cardiologist. The people that had the highest exposure of plaque, there was some higher amounts of microplastics that were there along with it.
Right. And think about the things that cause plaque, right? Ultra-processed foods with unhealthy fats, packaged in plastic that you might microwave, and having all that stuff out there. So, I mean, look, I guess what I'm trying to tell you is that this is a new concern. A few other maybe data points that might be helpful for your listeners to say before. I always try to take people's anxiety down when we talk about stuff like this, but I think there's a few more points that are worth floating out there because this is all relatively new discoveries and research about us. Like earlier, we were talking about the discoveries that are positive. Like, okay, let's be fair. There are some things that we should be alert about, and microplastics is one of them. We're now able to measure microplastics in your bloodstream. We don't do it routinely, but you can measure it in the blood. You can measure it in the plaques, the narrowing of your arteries. And they've also found microplastics in human brain. So much microplastics, by the way, that if you could take a kitchen scale, the kind you'd measure out for weighing dough for a cake, all right, and you can measure the weight of the plastic in the brain on a kitchen scale, all right. It's not the old type of scale with a chain, but a very sensitive scale. That's how much plastic can accumulate in your brain, and that plastic has been shown to stimulate inflammation. Not surprisingly, brain inflammation clearly associated with cognitive defects, brain fog, all these other things you don't want to have. And we're scratching our heads saying, hey, why are we a society dealing with so much dementia? I don't know. Maybe the microplastics are playing a role. It's not the magic bullet answer, but wow, this is another thing that we need to be aware of. Found it in testicles. All right. So if you're a guy and you're like, I ain't scared of no microplastic. If I told you it's in your balls, all right, you might think twice. They find it in urologists who are doing surgery on the human penis, have found microplastics studded in the tissue, in the muscle of the penis. How did it get there? I don't know, but obviously it somehow got there from the bloodstream or some other way. You can guess on that. But the fact of the matter, they find it in the penis. They found it in human semen.
Well, one of the theories is that all this polyester clothing that we're wearing has microplastics inside of it.
Oh yeah.
So when you're wearing polyester underwear, men or women, and all this athleisure that is so common, it's not like we're wearing organic cotton all the time, or wool, or cashmere, or whatever. Yeah. We're using all these synthetic fibers. These synthetic fibers, they shed microplastics. And then we are also drinking tap water, a lot of us.
Running through plastic pipes.
It's running through plastic pipes, but also all this, in America especially, all these clothes that we wash, it's in the wash cycle. You take the microplastics, go through the water system. And from my understanding from EWG, we don't have the advanced filtration abilities, even in America here, to get rid of things like microplastics. This is why I'm a huge fan of just having a high quality filter at home.
Yeah.
Because, thank goodness that we have access to clean water in the United States, which means it doesn't have bacteria. We're not going to get typhoid or other things like that, which is how a lot of people were dying from poor sanitation previously in the world. But now we have this new problem. Like you said, it's the modern day smoking that we're dealing with, and it's plastics. And so I had heard somebody, it's actually a great quote. I've shared it before. I had heard a speaker a long, long time ago in the whole raw food movement that I was once part of. They used to say that either you get a filter or your body becomes the filter.
That's a good one.
And there's a lot of good options that are out there. Don't get a Brita, because that's mostly focused on just removing chlorine for taste, but get a good quality reverse osmosis.
What kind of filter do you have?
I have reverse osmosis.
Okay.
Now, the criticism that people have is that, reverse osmosis takes out all the good minerals that are inside. I don't know about you, but I'm not drinking tap water to get minerals, right? You can add some trace minerals back in a few times a week. You can add some electrolytes.
And actually, you can get most of the minerals from the food that you eat.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm not worried about that aspect. And occasionally I'll add in with my big 32 ounces of water that I'll take to the gym in the morning. I'll just put in a few trace minerals. There's a brand, I have no affiliation. It's called Trace Minerals. Great. That's out there. There's plenty of other brands that are there. So I use reverse osmosis.
Okay.
I don't want that exposure that's there. And I think that's one of the easiest things that people can do.
Well, look, I mean, this is a great conversation. It's really practical, right? So we all drink water. We all have water running in our houses. I mean, hopefully you do. And here's a simple way to address a concern, but it's still surround sound with plastic, right? So what are the things that I tell people that are really common sense? First of all, don't eat off of plastic plates or use plastic silverware or drink from a plastic cup. Think about the summer picnic, or the big house party that you actually have. And, like, what do? You go out and go to the store and you buy the party plates and the party silverware. It's all plastic, right? Not only do you throw it away like that evening or that later the next day, but for the environment, but people are eating off of those. And there's no doubt that they're shedding microplastics as well. So avoid plastic plates and silverware and cups.
From what I've also understood, I don't know if you've connected with her, but she's an incredible researcher in this space and now advocate. Her name is Dr. Yvonne Burkhart. She is a toxicologist by training who got super sick by working in the food and the fragrance industry with all these different additives and flavors. And she developed a bunch of different illnesses, removed herself from that exposure and started to clean up her life and became now an advocate for what she calls a low-tox lifestyle. All very basic things of how we can protect ourselves. She said, one thing that I want people to be aware of now that they're talking about plastics is that we have to also just be aware that even a lot of paper cups, for example, if we had this piece of paper right here where I have my show notes that I did for preparation of this podcast, if we turned it into like a little cup and we poured water, it would basically disintegrate, especially hot water. It would melt, or it would at least start to break down. It wouldn't stay firm. Now, when we go to a coffee shop, and again, this is about doing our best, right? It's not about getting overly anxious or worrying. When we get a paper cup, we have to understand that these paper cups, the reason that they don't disintegrate is because they're coated.
With plastic.
And often that coating is plastic.
Exactly.
So just very simply, you can get a mug. Many coffee shops, even here in LA, will give you a discount.
Metal, glass. Those are the ways to actually go.
Have you started doing that even in your own life? Is 100%. That something that you try to do?
100%.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not always perfect. There's sometimes you're there in an airport and you're traveling and you want a cup of coffee and you don't have access and they don't have takeaway cup. They don't have here cups. But I would say 99% of the time, I'm going to be having a cup with me or going to ask for a cup.
It's an easy thing to do. Listen, if you are athletic and you go to work out and you bring your water bottle, swap it out from the plastic one to one was made out of metal or glass.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a really easy fix. I also think that not buying food that's been packaged in plastic is really important. All right. I mean, and by the way, you can go to the produce section and buy lovely cherry tomatoes that are found in a plastic box with a plastic top. All right. and then you're going to wash it with unfiltered water in your house, and you're pretty much marinating this thing with, it's been marinated, and you're going to wash it more with plastic water containing plastic, right? So again, I sort of try to be more selective of buying foods that are not pre-packaged in plastic.
It's tough.
It is very tough.
Because even like my wild-caught salmon or my grass-fed beef, even if you get it at Whole Foods in like, or like an Erewhon or whatever in the sort of deli section where it doesn't look like it's touching plastic. If you go behind and you see when they're getting it initially,
they're wrapped in plastic.
It's wrapped in plastic.
This is actually a modern conversation, Dhru, that I think needs to be had. And hopefully there will be people in government and people in the private sector and companies. They're going to want to come together and have this intelligent conversation to say, listen, this is a new discovery. We didn't realize this was happening. What do we do collectively to make better decisions so that the public is actually going to be less exposed to these toxins, even if it's impossible? Like, if I ever have hesitation about the plastic thing, I just, in my mind, I'm picturing a credit card. Do I want to be eating that this week? No. So I'm going to try to make another decision. But, plastic food containers, you got leftovers. What do we used to do? You go to the, Tupperware. I don't think that company's around anymore, but not good. Don't put your food in a plastic container, all right? And then you put it in the fridge where you may have had foods that you cooked in glass or metal or, cast iron or whatever, and now you have just put it into a plastic container overnight to marinate with the plastic. And then you're going to heat it up the next day in the microwave, and now you're going to actually put more or cook it or heat it up, in the plastic. No, don't do it. So I always say, toss out your plastic storage containers. I know they're cheap. I know they're convenient. I know they're light. I know they're things that you can easily take to work for the next day if you're trying to heat up some lunch. But please, just get glass containers. It's okay if the top is plastic. Honestly, it's not going to touch the food for the most part, but because it's really hard to find a glass top. Nobody's going to be carrying around a glass box everywhere they're going. All right, but minimize the amount of plastic. Those are avoidable things. And the other thing that I heard Sanjay Gupta from CNN, who I know, say about microplastics, he said, change out your toothbrush. I didn't think about this, but yeah, you keep using the same toothbrush the whole time, breaks down. And now you are deliberately putting microplastics that are going to break down into your mouth and rinsing them around, and you're going to be swallowing some. And so just make sure you change out your toothbrush, and don't change them out before they wear down.
That's great. I have another low-hanging fruit that's based on some research that we wrote about in my newsletter, which is that if you have Teflon pans that have scratches on them, inside of those Teflon pans is basically a coating of plastic in the layers that are there. That's part of it. These PFAs, these microplastics that are there. And they found that just a single scratch on an average size skillet for a Teflon pan, because these pans develop scratches over a period of time, can leach up to 1,000 to 10,000 microplastics and nanoplastics every time you cook. So an easy solution, that's also actually a cheap solution, is that all the researchers that I've talked to say stainless steel is great. It's cheap. Now, there can be fancier solutions that are out there. There are companies that sell ceramic and that sell this and that, but just stainless steel, and it's going to last forever. And you're not going to have that same exposure. So take a look at your pans, especially the ones that are Teflon, or even if they're the ceramic coating that has scratches on it, that can be detrimental to your long-term health. So just go for a cheap solution. Stainless steel is the cheapest and easiest.
And I will tell you, again, back to simplicity. If you want a pan that's going to last a long time, that is kind of a workhorse in the kitchen, just look at what chefs use. All right. I mean, I'm fortunate to have a lot of friends who actually are either cooks or chefs. They all use stainless steel pans. That's the workhorse in a restaurant. And at home, like I have stainless steel pans, or cast iron, which is heavier. And you get a little bit of iron actually from cast iron. If you're iron deficient, like when you cook in a cast iron pan, you get a little bit of the iron. And you can season and condition them. If you have a stainless steel wok, okay, if you condition it the right way and take care of your pots and pans and woks the right way, they actually make a nonstick surface. All right. So you don't need to have that NASA developed space age, 1960s innovation in order to be able to have a real workhorse. And I think that's what people need to have. I teach an online course called Eat to Beat Disease course. And one of my favorite modules in my course is about rethinking your kitchen. And I tell people, like, what are the things you should toss out that are not good for your health and swap in, and keeping simple cookware, stainless steel pan, cast iron skillet, and a wok. That can, and pots made of the same kind of material. That's actually that gets you the whole way in terms of like almost every situation for cooking.
I want to pivot here again and come back to the concept of food, because, that's really your bread and butter of what you're amazing about educating people about. And I always find that anytime people hear you talk about food and the power of ingredients, they get so excited to double down on going back to a whole foods diet, eat a little bit healthier that day, which makes a huge difference over a period of time. So on the topic of longevity, it's not just about living to a long age and being healthy. People also want to look good. And one of the things that I've loved is that I see that one of the top videos that my audience has watched that you've made is on the topic of collagen, and how collagen is an important part of keeping us looking young for a long time. So I want to ask you, what are the top ways that we can naturally boost collagen in our diet? And then are there other foods that you have found that also can help us not only live a healthy life, but stay looking young?
I have no problem with wanting to look as good as you can, right? And we all, vanity and our self-image is super important. So there's no judgment there in talking about sort of figuring out how to keep yourself looking as youthful as possible, and you want to look good. More power to you. I'm all for it. So number one, I want to kind of put that out there. So collagen is actually an important way to do it, because that's how your body does it. All right. By having this biomaterial that exists under your skin that provides structure so that you look the way that you want to look. Wrinkles, different types of tissue that look sagging, like it's usually due to some stretch or disruption of collagen or weakening of collagen. And our body continuously produces collagen. It's a protein. Okay. And collagen, by the way, is amazing. It's a triple helix. It's kind of like taking three threads of protein and the old macrame thing you might have learned when you were a kid, you weave them together. That's what your body does to make collagen that actually sits in lockstep with each other in a line, woven like an oriental rug into patterns that actually give us structure to our skin, tensile strength, shape, structure, form, and then you got blood vessels that have to go through there, so you get nice coloring. All right, and so all these things are really, really important. Okay, and by the way, there's one to give an example that a lot of people don't know about. Your cornea is the front of the eye. It's what you put your contact lens on if you wear contacts. It's the crystal clear front, just like the watch face on front of your eye. And it's completely clear, and that's made out of collagen too. And the reason that light can pass right through it, so we can see each other, is because the collagen fibers are oriented exactly in lockstep. And if you mess up the collagen in the front of your eye, it clouds up, and now you can't see. That's how important collagen is. So how do you actually keep your collagen healthy? How does your body rebuild? How can you support that using food? Well, it turns out collagen is made with amino acids because it's a protein. So you want to keep up your protein. So something very simple. Like I try to keep things as simple and doable as possible. Okay. Make sure that you have adequate protein, because the protein you eat puts amino acids into your body, and your body's going to harvest some of those amino acids to build, in part, collagen. So you want to keep on growing collagen, you're going to need to eat an adequate amount of protein to be able to just keep up that structure under your skin, number one. Number two, an interesting cofactor is what we call it in science, that your body needs to build healthy collagen in that lockstep woven way for good shape and form and structure, is vitamin C. So if you don't have vitamin C, your collagen will fall apart. And a great example of that is you probably, your listeners probably heard about this disease called scurvy, which people, on pirate ships and long journeys on the ocean used to have. There was no citrus, no vitamin C. You know what? Their teeth used to fall out. All right. And the reason is because the collagen in their gums couldn't be adequately remade because they didn't have vitamin C. And so the gums got weak, their collagen got weak, and their teeth came out. All right. And their joints got weird. So this is really what you want to have is good vitamin C. How do you support vitamin C? Well, you could take a supplement easily, but actually there's so many other whole foods that have so many other supportive elements for overall health. You might as well have them. Obviously, citrus, oranges, in the wintertime, tangerines, tangelos, there's a lot of different kinds of oranges and citrus you can actually have. But other less obvious sources of vitamin C are kiwi, red bell peppers, tomatoes, guava, all great sources of vitamin C. And broccoli, a great source of vitamin C. So you can get vitamin C from your diet, and I encourage people to eat diversely to get that vitamin C from whole foods because you get all the bioactives and the polyphenols and a dietary fiber as well as extra credit for your effort. Whereas a simple tablet of vitamin C, all right, it'll help the vitamin C, but you're missing out, man. And so I always think that get it from the whole foods. So vitamin C, getting enough protein for amino acids, getting your vitamin C. And then, by the way, and this is something that I used to think was bunk, but then I realized there's real research to it and real science, and I participated in some of it, so I know it's real. An example of where I changed my own mind with evidence and science is actually having collagen products. Okay, eating collagen will actually build collagen. And so let me tell you why I was skeptical. Years ago, someone would say, I'm going to have some bone broth and I'm going to have some collagen and it's going to make my joints better. And my first response back then is, this is like 10 years ago. I'd say, that's bunk. No way it's true. What are you going to say? You're going to eat some collagen, little collagen worms, those little eels are going to swim out of your stomach and swim their way to your joint and stick in your joint. It's not going to happen. All right. And maybe that's how it was marketed. But actually, here's what actually happens. When you have a dietary source of collagen. So what are some dietary sources of collagen? Bone broth. You boil up enough bones from things, it's filled with collagen from the animal, from the bones. Dissolves the bones, it always dissolves the joints. It is rich. I mean, if you ever had really good quality bone broth, it is delicious and it is dense. It's got stuff in it. And like
something a human being has been having for a long time.
Thousands of years. This is like your great-great-great-grandmother's solution to health. And now we're rediscovering it with science. It's got collagen in it. All right. What's another source of collagen? Jell-O. I'm not talking about like the atomic colored Jell-Os that we had when we were kids, like bright green and bright orange, like colored stuff that you don't want to have. Like, I'm not talking about those Jell-Os. Those Jell-Os have all those additives that we talked about at the very beginning. We don't want to avoid and added sugar, right? But I'm talking about, you can get plain gelatin. Okay. If you look in the middle aisle of the grocery store, go look for Knox gelatin or whatever. It's just a plain box of just powdered gelatin, and you can make your own gelatin out of it. And you can flavor it the way you want. You can make it sweet. You can make it savory. You can make it neutral. That's a way of actually doing it. Okay, of having collagen as well. But let me tell you biologically what happens that actually it helps your body build collagen. Collagen is a pretty big molecule when you eat it, whether bone broth or Jell-O or whatever. Gnaw on a chicken wing. Okay, you're going to get some collagen in your system. Gets your stomach acid. That collagen is busted up. That stomach acid is a cauldron that digests any food that you have, including collagen, which breaks it up into a million pieces. And this is where I went wrong with my assumptions that you break it up to a million pieces, that little snake of collagen can't swim anywhere. Okay, so we've shattered that idea a long time ago. Actually, the biology is now teaching us something different. When you digest collagen into fragments, those fragments get absorbed into your bloodstream. And collagen fragments are actually biologically active. Mm. Those collagen fragments will circulate in your bloodstream, affect your joints, and collagen fragments will activate the cells that make collagen, like fibroblasts, okay, special cells that can actually make collagen, and they will stimulate the collagen-making cells to make more collagen. That's why bone broth and Jell-O actually works for your joints, for your joint health, and for skin health as well. It actually is true. So again, if you're going to actually buy product that is packaged, whether it's plain gelatin or bone broth, please look at the ingredient label, because that's actually how you get the transparency to know whether or not there's anything added to it by the factory, the manufacturer, that you might not be comfortable with. Get the pure stuff, get the elemental stuff. That to me is what you really, really want when it comes to bone broth. Don't have crazy chemical additives. If you can't pronounce it, you don't know what they're for in there. Okay, you wouldn't put it in your, you wouldn't add that in your house, probably. That's something you want to avoid. And that's, again, choice. Choose the one that's actually simpler, that's actually doesn't have those additives or toxins that we're trying to avoid, right? This is where we're headed, I think, as a society. We're trying to raise our awareness of these things. We're trying to take action. Hopefully, companies and governments and educators will all, and the medical community all get together to say, you know what? It's like smoking. Not a good thing to do. Let's all work together in alignment to make sure we're not doing these kinds of things and we're not exposing to people. But at the end of the day, it's a choice that we're actually making. You can still get a cigarette. Okay. You can still choose to smoke it. Most people who care about health don't. And so, but this is, again, amazing ways to actually take care of that collagen that's going to make your skin looks good. Structure, function, tensile strength, shapes your body in any way, shape, or form that you want it to be. All right. You need to have good collagen, amino acids, protein, vitamin C, and collagen-containing products like bone broth or Jell-O are simple ways that you can go to the store today to help your body's collagen.
Incredible. Just what are your thoughts on whether it's a supplemental form, high quality, or whether it's something like a bone broth? Should somebody be thinking about having that a few times a week?
It's a great part of having a diverse diet. And you know, supplements, I call supplements for what they mean, topping off. You know, like if you can't get it any other way, yeah, choose a supplement. Why not? You know, or you can't eat enough, try some supplements. So I don't have a problem with collagen supplements. They actually work. You know, I mean, they work for veterinarians, which they work for dogs with arthritis. And actually, human studies actually are showing that as well, for the reasons I actually told you that I had been skeptical about before. But in fact, the human evidence actually shows us now that the biology of collagen fragments activating the cells to make more collagen actually works in your body. So I'm all for it. You know, I have to tell you, you know, like I was a little under the weather like last week. And you know what I did? I made some soup, but I made it with bone broth.
Wow.
And actually,
homemade? Did you make it at home or did you pick some up?
I went out to the store to buy it because I
making bone broth is a little tough and it stinks up the whole house.
You know what? I do it after like a Thanksgiving meal or whenever there's poultry or bones being available, like a carcass. I'll actually make it myself. Delicious, but yeah, it's work. You know, and
totally.
But I bought the bone broth, and you know, I'll just tell you, just N of one myself taking self-care. I felt so much better after sipping the bone broth soup. And it wasn't a placebo effect. Like my sinuses cleared. I felt more relaxed, you know, like my headache kind of went down. I'm sure some of that is these peptides and fragments and things like that that are in the bone broth. And so, listen, I mean, grandma was right. Have some chicken soup.
That's awesome. You know, on this theme of longevity is not just about how we, you know, how long we live and making sure we're free of chronic disease and that our brain is sharp, but also part of that is looking good too. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to look good. In fact, I think there's some data that's out there that I came across that actually, like, how you perceive yourself to look, if you perceive yourself to look young, you actually feel young, right? I'm sure there's something in that dimension versus if you feel like you look old in your perception, like your look accelerated in your aging, that can have some mindset, you know, impact on you as well. I don't know if that's true or not. I'll share with you what I came across and you can tell me and we'll add it to the show notes afterwards. But on the topic of not only feeling young, but looking young, is there anything out there like collagen that you've seen that makes a difference in how we look?
All right. So I'm going to give you some like cutting edge research that I'm impressed by, that I have become a believer in the science of, and it's leading to products that you can actually find on the market.
Oh, wow.
And have you heard of exosomes?
Yeah, for sure.
So exosomes are these tiny little packages that are found in normal healthy cells. And these little packages are more like When I say package, I mean like a box. Okay, they're a little box and they contain cargo. And the cargo is something, it's genetic material, special kind of genetic material called microRNA. Okay. And microRNA isn't like this BS topic that's just influencers are talking about, but in fact, it won the Nobel Prize in 2024. So it's real science that's been recognized as profoundly important to our understanding of the human body. Okay. And our human biology. And that's what's inside an exosome. And so what do these little cargo of micro DNA, microRNA, what do they do? Well, it's a way of one cell communicating to another because they release these exosomes. So exo means going out. And so these little particles that are inside the cell get spewed out. Okay. And they hit the nearby cells. And those nearby cells, the microRNA in the exosome gives the signal to tell the cell next door to reboot itself, to regenerate itself, to restore itself, to go reprogram itself. Which is pretty amazing, which is basically one cell telling the next cell to keep yourself a little bit younger. All right. Now, I could take that further and turn it into a marketing statement, which I won't because I'm a scientist, but you can tell where this will go. Because if you then take exosomes, which you can find from human tissue, where do you find them? You find them from body fat, fat that is sucked out by liposuction, usually thrown away. Okay. You can harvest exosomes from there. So companies are actually now harvesting human exosomes with these youth commanding packages that tell cells to reset themselves and putting them into skin creams.
Wow.
So,
and there's actually evidence that it's making a difference?
Okay. So I was at a private conference where I invited a researcher to come in to present some data and a product and clinical studies on exosomes. And she busted out a skin cream and showed patient after patient after patient, case studies before and after. Okay. And I got to tell you, the skin looked a lot better. And for skin that was aging or not doing well or had a disease, the reset it, clearly reset the skin.
Wow.
You know, and this is a trusted colleague of mine. So I know that like it would not be like, there's no hanky panky in the clinical data. All right. I mean, there was like real cases. So what's really exciting is that is the sustainable potential for exosomes, because it turns out, and I'm super excited about this because of my work in food as medicine, you can also get exosomes from foods. Plants have exosomes.
Wow.
You can find it in aloe vera, which is a food source in Latin America. You can find it in ginger. You can find it in coffee grounds and coffee beans. Isn't that amazing? And there's a huge overlap in the Venn diagram between the microRNA in the exosome of a plant compared to human fat. Isn't that amazing?
Totally.
I mean, think about how far apart we were evolutionarily way back when. Like, we looked nothing like a coffee bean or a piece of ginger. And yet our microRNA in our exosomes shares an overlap.
That's incredible.
That is incredible.
You know, just because I know people are going to hit us up afterwards, right? Is your friend's product that he presented on, is that commercially available? You know, and you don't have to mention it.
The person who I invited to speak, who you might want to have on this podcast at some point, is Dr. Robin Smith.
Okay.
Okay. She's a physician entrepreneur. She's been involved with stem cells and all kinds of other things. Happy to make the introduction to you. And she started a company called Exosuticals, which obviously have to do focusing on exosomes. And as far as I understand, there is a product that's out there that's a skin cream that's actually for healing and for resetting the skin.
Okay. Interesting. We'll check it out afterwards.
Definitely check it out. I mean, look, I think in the same spirit, we're talking about the pioneers for longevity and anti-aging and, or healthy aging. Like, look, this is what's cool. In today's world, what we didn't have back in the time of the Emperor of China, creating those, terracotta warriors, we have real science. We've got real technology. We live in a modern world where lots of smart people are coming at this topic in lots of different ways. How do we have longer? How do we live better? How do we look better? How do we actually stay healthier? What are the foods we should eat? And of course, what are the things we should avoid, including the environmental toxins and microplastics and things that we've actually covered as well.
Yeah, no, it's super important. And like you said previously, is that these things are fine to explore, but don't forget about the basics. On this topic of looking young and feeling young as well too, and having a healthy body. One thing anecdotally that I've generally seen is that I'm a fan, I have no affiliation with this test called Omega Quant. It's a fatty acid profile. It breaks down your 3, 6, 9, and it also tells you how much exposure to trans fats do you have inside of the body. Because even though trans fats have been quote unquote banned, they're actually still in the food system, and you don't have to declare them if they're under, I think, like 0.5% or something like that. And then there are some controversial thoughts that people have that some highly adulterated oils, especially seed oils, could become trans fats, especially if you're talking about like deep frying foods in a restaurant, not changing the foods. I don't know the research on that, but that seems to be a debate that's out there. So anecdotally, I've seen from having recommended this test, because it gets people, again, this is correlation, observational data, but people who typically have the highest omega index, which means that they have a good fatty acid profile, low to no trans fats inside of their body, and they're getting plenty of omega-3s from the Mediterranean diet, healthy fish in there, sometimes supplementally taking fish oil, high quality fish oil. There's so much research that those individuals have incredible cardiovascular health. But anecdotally, I've also seen that people who consistently score high on the fatty acid profile, I generally see that their skin looks a lot better than people who score lower. Now, that's an anecdotal thing. I only have maybe 14, 15 friends that have done it, but you got to figure that also how you eat plays a huge role. And if you're eating a lot of fish and you're regularly having things like bone broth, you're probably having more collagen in your diet as well.
Well, yeah. And omega-3s also help support vascular health, blood vessels under the skin, bring circulation, which then make your skin cells healthier, give you better coloration, So yeah, I would believe that, I think that it's sort of like it makes sense that everything that you just said makes a lot of sense. Whether or not the test is the best test or the only test or the valid test. I think those are things, those are the deep dive details that will be worth checking out. But
sure,
I totally agree that, like the idea of like looking at trans fat is something you want to avoid. Looking at healthy omega-3s is something that you want to add. That, these are uncontested.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you work on a new book, even with your vast level of knowledge, you always come back and you are highlighting something new that you knew about before, but you're sort of doubling down on the principles of this particular food. So in preparation, literally you're in the thick of it. You're in Los Angeles, you're writing, you just came back from Greece, you were writing over there. Is there anything that you started to pay attention to a little bit more than before that has now become one of the foods that you're writing about its unique and beneficial properties?
I go back to the things that I encounter, I make for myself every single day, or I make sure that I'm putting it into my diet every single day, which is the benefits of coffee, benefits of tea, and keeping it elemental, meaning simple, unadulterated, like none of the crazy drive-through stuff with flavorings. But yeah, the more data I look at coffee or tea, I'm saying, oh, this actually makes sense. And it's quite impressive that it also improves the cognitive function in people who are older. It improves muscle strength and performance in people as they get older as well. Like, I haven't really been able to poke any holes or, even as you're kicking the tires about coffee and tea. So it makes me double down on, the pleasure I already get out of drinking coffee. I usually drink coffee in the morning and I'll drink tea in the evening.
How many cups of tea would you have in a day? And what's your favorite kinds?
I like green tea, but I also like oolong tea. I like jasmine tea. Jasmine tea is just green tea with jasmine flowers in it. And in my last book, one of the things I wrote about is that it's a myth that you only have only green tea is actually healthy. It turns out that black teas are also healthy, and they also have theaflavins and other bioactives that are also beneficial that can help your metabolism. All right. And then the fermented teas, which is taking tea to a ultra extreme where it's black and it's fermented. It becomes a probiotic tea. Wow, cool. I can actually drink tea that's also probiotic. So I think I've expanded as I'm going through my research now. I'm deepening my appreciation of the benefits of both tea and coffee. I'm also thinking about drinking matcha more. I enjoy matcha anyway. It's a little bit more work to actually, because it's powder, you got to dissolve it and, you got to store it in a certain way. But honestly, matcha contains the fiber, 100% of the fiber of the tea leaf. Good for the gut microbiome, gut, brain. I'm thinking about longevity and aging and cognitive health. Like, okay, maybe I should do some matcha now as well. So yeah, these are it's a good question. Like, honestly, these are the day-to-day things as I'm researching and learning and thinking about and writing. I'm also encountering, I'm not writing science fiction. I'm writing about science fact.
That's amazing about tea. I definitely have increased. I was always a green tea fan. I never actually used to drink any coffee at all. I never really needed the coffee to have energy in the morning. But now I do 1 cup of coffee, which is an espresso, just 1 shot of espresso, because I'm actually pretty caffeine sensitive. I don't like too much caffeine at once. And I'll have like 1 to 2 cups of green tea later in the day. And that's directly because I feel like I've gotten excited about the benefits of green tea from listening to all your content over the years. William, as always, I have such a blast chatting with you. I'm more excited than ever to focus on the simple stuff, the basic stuff, living a life based on whole foods, unadulterated foods, a little bit of, excursions every so often, but largely focusing on the basics. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of our entire audience for coming on and sharing your latest information. I can't wait till your book is out on longevity. And we'll invite you back on the podcast to chat more about it.
Well, thanks very much. And, for people that actually are interested in following kind of like my research, I'm doing something new now.
Yes.
That I didn't do before as I'm writing my book. I'm actually putting out content on my YouTube channel, which I encourage people to subscribe to and hit like. And it's going to happen to start happening pretty soon, where I'm actually going to be talking about the subjects that I'm writing about in real time. So you want to check out what I'm actually doing and what I'm learning and what I'm discovering. So if it's something I'm excited about, I'm going to share it. I encourage people to actually come up and check me out on YouTube at Dr. William Li.
Amazing. We'll link to it in the show notes. William, thank you so much again for being on the podcast.
Thanks very much.
Hey, YouTube, if you enjoyed what you just saw, keep watching for more great content on how to improve your brain and your life.
It's fiber. It's so underrated. It's not funny. Fiber in whole foods is phenomenally underrated, and it's so easy to get as well.